"Why don't you go knock a few back with your buds at the Skunk and Barnacle?" she said acidly, in spite of herself. "I'll stay home and vegetate in front of the TV." Her mention of the Skunk and Barnacle was calculated to strike a raw nerve in Garrett, for he harbored deep within his psyche dark and hurting memories of an unspeakable emotional trauma he'd suffered at said stoop, the psychological aftermath of which had affected him quite profoundly. This had happened some 6 or 7 moons ago, when he'd last set foot therein. The Skunk and Barnacle was a raunchy dive along the docks, directly kitty corner across the square from the Hall of Justice, that was known to cater to members of the bar, as well as gleefully gesticulating groups of day court attendees, tabloid aficionados, and gabble-mongers who represented the sleazier underside of said establishment's otherwise questionable clientele. Melody's callous mention of the pub by its name was premeditated to trigger symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder in Garrett, and therethrough heighten the patterns of his oral sadistic character as manifested by his oral aggressive impulses and propensities. In particular, the bludgeoning sarcasm and verbal hostility for which she'd come to idolize and venerate her lover. What had transpired at the aforespoken pub might have appeared to the casual or superficial observer to be of niffling consequence, yet scarce could anyone have foreseen, much less foresmelt, from Garrett's ostensibly placid demean, the raging firestorm that had been sparked thereby. As it turned out, he had mischanced to overhear Melody's best friend, Angelique, gossiping about him to her handyman, Ricardo, in the adjacent booth. Angelique had told Ricardo that Melody had alluded to her money honey, behind his back no less, as an ass-faced fool. Hearing tell of this hair-raising, nay, this blood-curdling account, read sickening revelation of his sweetheart's superciliously contemptuous, malignantly scornful, insufferably insulting prepossession apropos of his personal character, and, by default, his constitutional integrity, as well as the X-teen times 411 plus unimpeachable principles, sage precepts, and stern commandments he not only stood for with his blood, soil, and honor, but lived every stound of his life and strained every fiber of his being to uphold and sustain, so help him God. And, further over, to add insult to injury, hearkening to this account second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or, dog forbid, seventh hand, instead of straight from the horse's mouth, had incensed outraged, addled, but most of all devastated Garrett so through and through, he'd nigh what succeeded shortly thereafter in kissing himself good night by jumping head foremost from the watchtower of the Campanile on the Pimpleton State Adversity campus, which was one of the chief tourist attractions in town. For directly beneath the site on which it was constructed could be found an intricate labyrinth of catacombs in which were stored the bones of many recently killed hospital and university administrators. Melody had known beforehand that, insofar as Garrett was concerned, her bringing up the subject of the skunk and barnacle stube in such a mordantly disrespectful, indelicately nasty tone of voice was tantamount to a strike below the belt, directly on the bullseye, where it hurt her honey most. She also perstood that it was fatally inevitable she would have to pay dearly for such a gaffe at some point down the line in the not-too-distant future. For Garrett was not known to suffer such slights gladly, even in cases where groveling apologies were conveyed by the perpetrators in question, when no sightly damage had actually resulted from their alleged malfeasances. She bit her lips then and there upon surrealizing what a precious little fool she'd been to show him her fangs. That is, to show them prematurely, especially right before going out with him unchaperoned for a night on the town. Now Garrett would surely interpret this as a weakness in her character and act accordingly to correct it.